what the shit is happening in Mexico with Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación and Los Chapitos and El Mayo, as they keep producing fentanyl. Now, let me tell you something I heard from a very reliable, very high up source I have in Sinaloa. This is something that is not going to be out in the news because he's not allowed to say, but I am. Allegedly, Los Chapitos have put out a request for everyone, journalists, musicians, YouTubers, whatever, to stop using their name. Stop saying the word Los Chapitos. Stop talking about us because it's getting us a lot of heat. They feel the pressure. But anyways, what I'm talking about is about fentanyl. Fentanyl keeps flowing to the U.S. in massive, massive quantities. The U.S., mostly Republicans, like this Senator Crenshaw, who said that he wanted to send troops into Mexico to fight against drug cartels, which I honestly don't think, first, that it's going to happen. Second of all, that's a smart. Third, I think that's a political standoff on his own benefit. Has absolutely no sense. Why? Because imagine that. We're not a far out country like Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever. We are the neighbors on the next door. Whatever happens to your neighbor is going to have a direct impact on you. Imagine U.S. troops getting into Mexico, starting a fucking war. First of all, Mexico is going to call out, we are an absolute independent country from you. We don't belong to you. We are sovereign, and you have to respect that. And that probably will escalate to a massive, unprecedented diplomatic issue, right? Borders closed. A lot of Americans throw out from Mexico. The U.S. also trying to, close the borders and stop the trade. And then a lot of the auto parts and a lot of the vehicles that are being made in Mexico, a lot of your iPhones, televisions will not get there. Chaos, absolutely fucking chaos. No one really wants that. I think what Senator Crenshaw and other people are trying to say is that we have control over Mexico because we are strong, whatever, blah, 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 and make ignorant people believe that that's going to get them votes, right? It's not going to happen. But a bipartisan bill, I think, has found a smart way to make Mexico comply, not with the having presence of U.S. military in Mexico to fight drug cartels, but to do more into fighting drug cartels because they are targeting a specific substance, fentanyl. Let's read this very much interesting story by friend Anna Jaritelli from the Washington Examiner. Bipartisan bill will empower Pentagon to take down Mexican drug cartels pushing fentanyl. Democrats and Republicans from the House and Senate will debate legislation that will declare fentanyl as a national security threat and allow the Pentagon to take new action targeting Mexican drug cartels. Senate Armed Services Committee members Johnny Ernst, a Republican from Iowa, and Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia, shared exclusively with the Washington Examiner Tuesday morning their forthcoming bipartisan bicameral bill to use their oversight authority of the Department of Defense to force the federal government to take stronger actions against Mexican transnational criminal organizations. The amount of lives lost in Iowa and across the country due to this deadly drug has far surpassed the federal government's response, and we must scale immediately to combat this national security threat, Ernst said in a statement provided to the Washington Examiner. This bipartisan work will engage Mexico as an active partner to counter fentanyl trafficking and put the Pentagon's tools to use to save American lives. This is interesting. This is one of the most interesting parts. This is a bipartisan bill. I mean, it's still being submitted. It's still not out there. But first, this is both Republican and Democrats. This is not as harsh as saying, let's send troops. This is saying, like, let's make sure that through the Pentagon, the Mexican fight the same drug cartels with us, along us. This is going to be a teamwork, right? So I think that's very smart. It's like, let's all join together forces to go against these guys. Again, I think it's a great idea to go against all of these guys. But there are other things at stake. Like, since Mexican President López Obrador began his administration, he's basically pushing to expel all foreign forces or armed forces in Mexico. It's no secret that the DEA, the CIA, and the FBI, even if the FBI considers itself a domestic agency or whatever, they do have presence, HSI as well, in Mexico, right? Well, since Andrés Manuel López Obrador arrived to the president to be president of Mexico, he basically run most of these agencies out. He even pushed to expel the only aircraft owned by the DEA in Mexican soil. He disarmed most of the armed agents in Mexico, and he requested all Mexican law enforcement, as low level as you are, to write a report if you somehow had any communication with a foreign agency. So I think this is the US government trying to gain turf back and say, like, hey man, we want to help you. Let's fight this fight together. Fentanyl is killing us and it's harming you. It's not only Republicans, it's also Democrats. And we can do this together, but we need a bit more hands on the ground. Why would the US need hands on the ground? Well, first of all, I think genuinely the US thinks that whatever happens in Mexico is a national security issue, which makes an absolute sense to me. But also, I think also Andrés Manuel López Obrador has not only have had like a strong, message against U.S. armed forces on Mexican soil and whatever, he's also kind of against a lot of U.S. mining companies and U.S. Multinational, like the Walmarts and all that stuff, that they were getting a lot of benefits. They weren't paying any taxes for operating in Mexico as a benefit to establish business in Mexico. Tesla as well. Like these huge companies, he's not being that benevolent to most of them. But again, I think this is the U.S. trying. Also, there was a very important incident in one of the Mexican coasts in Cancun. A huge mining company established there, extracting shit tons of mineral from that coast. I mean, that company has been established there like for 30 years or something. And very recently and very quietly, the Mexican army basically breached the company's land and seized the whole goods of the company, saying that they didn't have a permit and that were exploiting Mexican soil. Again, both sides very respectable concerns, right? On the U.S. side, the company is like, dude, really? This is a private company. We're paying our permits. We've been here for 30 years. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, the Mexican Marines enter our property, break on our property, get rid of all the workers, and seized our goods without any other reason but saying that, no, there is no way that we could have had a permit to keep extracting minerals. This company was one of the main supporters, financial-wise, to the Republican Party and at some extent also to the Democrat Party. They have a huge lobby team in the U.S., and I think this also has to do with that. Let's keep reading. The Disrupt Fentanyl Trafficking Act will require the Pentagon to develop a fentanyl-specific counter-drug strategy, including how to work directly with the Mexican military and to increase security operations with Mexico. If we want to prevent future tragedies, the United States must work with Mexico to counter fentanyl trafficking across our southern border, Kane said. This bipartisan common sense bill will help us create the strongest strategy for how to do that. Fentanyl is largely moved into the U.S. from Mexico and the ingredients to make the powerful drug originate in China and are then shipped to producers in Mexico. Ernst and Kane maintained that enlisting the Mexican government as an equal partner in the war on fentanyl is critical, given the southern neighbor has failed to get a hold of the problem over the past 5 years. And this is just what I was telling you. These guys want to play it cool with Mexico, saying, hey, dude, we can work side by side. This is going to be critical because you really haven't done shit to stop that from happening, which is absolutely true. Having AMLO denying every single fucking morning that fentanyl is not being produced on Mexican soil, and then China saying we're not shipping precursors to Mexico or to any other country that we know, it's absolutely bullshit. It's harming everyone. Border cities like Tijuana, like Ciudad Juarez, and most recently Nuevo Laredo have been seeing a large spike in fentanyl seizures. U.S. border cities like Arizona, San Diego, El Paso, Texas have seized humongous quantities of fentanyl in the past 4 or 5 years. So I think this is an issue that the U.S. at least is recognizing, saying we have a crisis. Of course, they're weaponizing these for political benefit, but they're recognizing this is a huge problem. The second step, I think, will be to recognize that that is a health issue within our country and to treat it like that. But Mexico and China are still on absolute denial, which is not only harming the U.S., it's honestly harming probably even more Mexicans. I can't speak for the Chinese because I have no fucking clue, but it has been harming Mexicans for several years now. So let's keep an eye on what's going to happen with this bill, which I find very interesting. I can see a way where Mexico said, we're not going to be part of that. No, we're not interested in working with you guys. I think this is going to put in a tight spot the Mexican president, and he's probably going to have to come out and say, yes, let's do it. What do you need? But let's see.